Welcome, and thank you for everyone who's made it here in person. We'll just be holding on for a few minutes as folks join in into the Zoom. So we'll get started in just a minute or two. Okay, looks like we're not bringing anyone else in, so I call this meeting of the South Whidbey School Board to order. The first note is actually that we have just come back from an executive session that lasted half an hour and was announced ahead of time. It was in order to discuss possible litigation with legal counsel under RCW 42.30.110 parentheses 1 parentheses I. We'll now move on to the land acknowledgement. Marnie?
Thank you. South Whidbey School District acknowledges that we gather on the ancestral homelands, originally known as Chakolchi in Lachute Seed, of the Coast Salish peoples, on the lands of the Lower Skagit, Tulalip, Swinomish, Snohomish, Stillaguamish, and Suquamish, who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin since time immemorial, who have hunted, fished, and gathered here, and who have taken care of these lands. We respect their sovereignty and their right to self-determination, and we honor their sacred spiritual connections to the land and water. Please join us in expressing our deepest gratitude and respect for the Indigenous people of this territory and our gratitude for their enduring care and protection of this land, which we currently occupy and share through the Treaty of Point Elliott, signed by 82 tribes in Mukilteo on January 22nd, 1855.
Thank you. Just as a note, as we get started, if you are in person and would like to make public comment, please sign up with Ms. Macaro at the back. If you're in a Zoom meeting and would like to make public comment during the public comment period, please enter your full name and your general location, Langley, Freeland, Oak Harbor, whatever it might be. And then you can start typing your comment after you've entered that, just so we know that you have a comment. Are there any objections to approving the agenda and minutes as presented? Hearing none, the agenda and minutes are approved as presented. Are there any objections to approving the consent agenda as presented? Hearing no objections, the consent agenda is approved as presented. We'll move on to our presentation on the state of the schools in the district from Dr. Moksha.
Thank you. I just need to share my screen. 1 second. And there we have it. So we start school with staff on Monday, the 29th, and our students begin on Wednesday, the 31st. So we are coming up on it. It is a week away for our students. And I know in talking with our 2 students on the school board, they're ready, but not quite, right? So I wanted to make sure that we come back to why we're here and what we're doing. We have a vision, mission, and values, and they're posted everywhere, but I think it's really important. And I know that as you certainly as board members and members of the public see our student board members in action, they know that every South Whidbey School District student is a lifelong learner who's multiculturally engaged, literate, and an active community member, able to meet the challenges of our global society. These 2 are a prime example of the students in our district. and how they live that vision. In collaboration with our community, every student will be supported to be resilient, innovative, compassionate, and productive graduate, prepared for a diverse and dynamic world. And we value accountability, collaboration, communication, compassion, equity, empathy, integrity, resilience, respect, and responsibility. The board looked at our vision and mission, and over the course of the last few years annually, set goals for the superintendent to help drive the direction of the district. This first goal, to build a school culture of care and belonging by engaging the staff and students in learning about, defining, and co-creating an inclusive environment. So we spent a long time last spring determining how to use our restorative practices to help forward the district. And the board appreciated that work and is directing us to build on that work. So a culture of care, we engaged with a restorative justice for education group, and they're really training the trainers. That's their goal. They are working with us. They won't leave our side, and it's through no additional cost for them to do that. They are partners now for the duration. We had a week of training. There was 24 hours of training that 13 of us engaged in, including one of our student board members, our classified staff, teaching staff, administrative staff. It was an intensive 4 days of training, 6 hours a day, fully engaged. Probably some of the best training I've had over the course of my career. It was outstanding and has set us up for opening day on Monday with our staff. We had a planning meeting today, and folks are ready to go. The gist of it is really about creating caring and belonging for every single student and staff member. And we have a roadmap, an action plan for moving that work forward. So that's how we're addressing the board's goal 1. Goal 2 is to continue prioritizing training and implementation of best practices in our district. You will hear from the principals in October about their work with staff on the school improvement plans and how that planning relates to the goals that the board has set. And per the board's request, we'll update the board again in January and March, but we also have scheduled presentations over the course of this school year every month on different areas of the curriculum and different aspects of the district's work, so that the board continues to be updated on the work of the district. I do want to say that one of the things that you need to know in terms of the state of the district, and Dan, who was joining us virtually tonight, talked to you about the budget throughout the spring, and you approved that budget in July based on an enrollment that we believe to be true at the time. And we still believe it to be true. However, we're seeing indications that we may actually have more students. And if that comes to pass, then we will have to adjust accordingly. That's a good development, but a difficult development, right? Because if we increased enrollment, for example, at the kindergarten level, but it decreased somewhere else, our budget is based on overall enrollment. So that's something we're watching very closely, but we won't know until after we begin and get settled and really see who's coming in and who may have left. So that just is something to keep on your radar. We will have more information at the business meeting in September when we go over enrollment. The third goal, and the one that I want to spend some time on tonight, is about crafting and implementing plans for the best use of our assets in the district. I'm going to talk more about the use of our buildings. The board has seen this presentation a couple of times, but I've added to it based on the input that we've heard the past couple of times we've shared this. And so we'll start with where we are in order to know where we're going. And so I want to make sure that we're really clear on, I truly believe that we could have more students, because what we have found out over time is that we've carried about 62% of the available students in the district until the last few years when we've gone up to about 75% of the available students. If we receive more students, it's not because they've moved in, but because they've decided to come to us. So we could very well see an increase in enrollment, but we don't know that yet. What we know about the census data right now is this. The 2020 census tells us that the 0 to 5 population and the school-age population continue to decline, and they decline significantly. We have a school-age population of about 1,775 students, and our current head count, and that was prior to school starting next week, 1318. So we are getting a significant number of our students, and so it's continuing to be a concern that our enrollment will continue to decline, as we know over time. It has been. But we are hoping that it's leveling off so that we can have some predictability. But every year is a new year. Last year, we gained a little bit. We opened our ALE program and gained some students that wouldn't have otherwise come to us. So pretty proud of that. At any rate, we have to be prepared, and we have to gracefully understand that our enrollment continues to shrink. Therefore, our funding continues to shrink, and our budget is going to respond. The last 2 years, we have had additional funding due to COVID. That funding's gone away. Our regionalization funding has dropped. The board has heard this in great detail, not a surprise. So we are responding accordingly. So what does all of that mean in terms of the use of our facilities? Well, I'm going to show you what we're walking into in September this year, next week, and how we're using our buildings, and then talk about the proposed use in the following year. So we'll look at the elementary school first. I highlighted these things. If you were at the last presentation, you know they were hard to see. The 3 orange boxes are the vacant rooms as we walk in September. And the 3 blue circles are rooms that potentially could be used differently because they have, for example, the counseling room has a counselor in it. Counselors see small groups. That could be in an alternative location. The room we're in currently tonight could be used differently during the day because the board uses it in the evenings. And then there's the STEM room and the Orca reading room. Some of these things could be used differently. We're also using several classrooms for special education, but only have 2 special education teachers. So again, just a different way of using the space that we have available to us that we don't necessarily have to use it that way next year. You've seen this slide before. This is the current South Campus. There are 3 sections of grade 5, 3 sections of grade 6. Based on what we saw at the North Campus, you could easily now move 3 sections of grade 5 to the North Campus. We're talking about a proposal for next September, but the room is there unless something dramatically different happens. So we've talked again about the 5-6. We serve about 150 students in that facility, plus the 2 ALE classrooms. We also rent quite a bit of that space to ECAP and Mother Mentors. We would, in addition to the rooms that are already vacant there, we would move band out of there because band would become a program located at the high school and could still serve the 5th graders down at the elementary school. Art would become only in the North Campus. It wouldn't need to be down there because all of the students would be here in the North Campus, and there is an art room here that's dedicated to that. So again, I'm moving quickly through it. I know that we're going to do an in-depth presentation at the next workshop, but I want to just make sure that we're putting this out to folks so that they've seen it and have the opportunity to give the board input over the next several weeks. Okay, so the high school, again, we've had some questions about what could we do at the high school. So that north wing at the high school, if we chose to, we could, it's 2 floors. We could house our 6th through 8th grade program in that north wing. And move those classrooms that are there now to other parts of the building because there's room. That's a possibility. We could also utilize the wing that 7th and 8th grade is in now and expand that use. Students that are in grades 9 through 12 already do not go through that corridor. So that could be a possibility for grades 6 through 8. The issue is not, the issue is, should we do this? We will take input from students and staff and community on where to locate, how to locate. What I'm showing is simply that we do have the space, not that it should be in one place or the other. So questions that are questions that we're trying to answer is, will we move to K-5 and 6-12? That's really what the board's grappling with. This is just a list of all the opportunities for input, those that have passed and those that are coming up. It's really all related to goal 3 that the board has set for us. And if this were to come to pass, we would spend time working on that bond proposal to be addressing the K-5 and 6-12 as opposed to all 3 sites. And I want to give credit where credit's due. Brooke has been taking copious notes, and he put together a Q&A. So rather than me go through the questions that we originally came up with that are here for folks to look at if they choose, I'm going to go right to the questions that have actually come up from the community so far and what the answers are as we know them now. And maybe that will help some folks. Certainly if people want to make comment tonight during public comment, but this is not an evening for conversation with the community. That's at the next meeting. This is just for information purposes. And we will post everything but the floor plans on our website. So if folks want to go back to it, you can. So vacant rooms at the North Campus aren't all together. I said to folks the last time I presented this that when I put that slide together back at the end of June, I had locations for classes all marked out, and over the summer they changed. That's how easily classes can move in a building. So I trust that the staff and the principal in the K-5 will appropriately place those 5th grades so that they're located near one another. The 6-8 being separated, we have made a commitment to that. They will be separated either, as I said, in one of the 2 spots I highlighted or in another configuration. They will also be separated for lunch periods. They're separated by their bell schedule. They don't spend time in the hallways together. And we've already started talking about if this were to occur, how can we create space through the bond that might give them even more separation. That's not a necessary change to make this move, but it certainly would benefit. And there was a question about how could the board vote not knowing the final configuration. The board really is trying to give as much time as possible because the last time we did consolidation, the board didn't make the decision until May, and we scrambled to try and be ready and to help kids adjust to that change. And we know a lot more now than we did then about how to make that change effectively. So that's why we're looking for a decision one way or the other early enough that we can put together a plan with students and staff and community. Why did we not do it back then? There wasn't enough room then. We've continued to shrink, and so things have changed again. One of the questions is there's a benefit to our 5th grade students moving classrooms and getting ready for that transition to 6th grade and for 6th graders to do the same. We would come up with a configuration for our 5th graders that would create a model that helped them adjust to a 6 or 7 period day, depending on what the configuration is at the 6-8. There's very little that would happen differently for 6th graders if they went into the high school in terms of rotating from what they do as 6th graders now. They would change teachers, they would move through a 5, 6, or 7 period day as they do now. And sixth graders, as I said, would be on the same bell schedule as the seventh and eighth grade. Class sizes are, regardless of this situation, whether the students are housed at the South Campus or North Campus or the high school building, which would be the middle high school, the class sizes aren't impacted by this. It's really about how we're using our resources in terms of the building. Again, moving sixth grade and making it a K-6, it's not the advice that our team would give the board, simply because the sixth graders are needing the benefits that they would find working with seventh and eighth grade in terms of being in a middle school like it used to be. And athletics is a nice perk. I mean, it's not the only reason, but it certainly would give kids the benefit of being able to be in middle level sports. We had a question that came up. Last time we did this, there were some folks who chose to keep their seventh graders out of school or send them to a different program. And would that happen again? We don't anticipate it happening again. We certainly think we can do this even more effectively, but it may happen. But what I would say is that we know anecdotally that the students came back to us. So we currently rent space. The community center is fully occupied. We still have, as I said earlier, we do have folks who also rent the South Campus. The long-term use of facilities, and are we looking at that? We are looking at that, but our first goal is, should we do something to reconfigure the students' program as opposed to worrying about what we'll do with our schools? And yes, the center pays for itself, and the pandemic changed that a little bit, but they're getting back on track. And repairs to our buildings typically come through a bond and not through rent, though rent certainly offsets some of those expenses. Again, were there as many vacant classrooms last year as there will be this year and then again in next year? No, our enrollment is trending down. We know that, so we continue to get more vacant rooms. Plan for students to gain input? Absolutely. No question about it. We've elevated student voice over the last couple of years and continue to intend to do that. And we're already working on ways to gather input about whether or not the board should make this decision as school opens. We're going to gain some student input, but certainly if you do decide to do it, we'll gain input on what it should look like. It's not contingent on the bond passing, but certainly the bond will improve all of our district schools. So it was great that the South Campus had their own separate space for PE, and that would be missing if the fifth grade at the North Campus with the lunchroom and the gym. Could the North Campus students still use the South Campus gym? We anticipate that they will use the South Campus gym. It actually could help offset the situation by moving the sixth grade up, because they have had a reduction in the number of PE spaces they've needed, or sections they've needed. And the fifth grade moving down to the K-5, they could still use that South Campus PE space. And then they wouldn't have to keep transitioning that cafeteria back and forth so quickly. They'd be able to do it, use the gym up there in the morning and after lunch, and then could use the South Campus. But again, I leave that to the folks that are going to be doing the scheduling if this decision's made. Could it be done? Absolutely. Let's see. Does the board have to vote in order to have the conversation? Absolutely not. That's why we're having these conversations. We also talked about a single start time. It's independent of this change, but we do anticipate that in the 23-24 school year, we may be able to go to one bus ride and do a later start time for the 6-12 students and put the K-5 on the same schedule. So we see that it's separate and apart from this, has nothing to do with whether or not this change were to occur, but it's something that we anticipate we could do. Let's see. Can't see my own question because I have to move my Zoom.
Is it too soon to make this change in case enrollment grows again? That's the
Oh.
question.
Yeah, it is not too soon. We know that we have space because we've been continuing to have empty space. We could gain 200 students and still do this move. We have enough space to do it. We also had some concerns that were just generally voiced. Vacant rooms for spacing because of the pandemic. How can we continue to do that if we do this? Hoping we don't need to. We definitely want to create a middle school experience for the 6-8, much like the 7-8 has now, and make sure that they have an identity, that they know that they're Cougars, that there's a 6-8 program. The separation, we talked about that. Transitioning and planning for that. And certainly we have people who are already clamoring to rent the South Campus, but again, that's not part of the conversation just yet. So I just wanted to bring the board up to date, put this out to the community again so that you can get input. People are welcome to provide input by sending email. Certainly coming to the next workshop, which is 3 weeks, September 14th. September 14th, there's a workshop. I'll be going through this information again. And if any other concerns or questions come in, we'll certainly add that and be able to talk about it. So I welcome any questions from the board about the state of the district. I just wanted to make sure that you know that we're opening on Monday and that you're all welcome to come for breakfast and training. I know so far only Brooke's able to do that, but we welcome the board's commitment. And if you can't make it on Monday, the board will be trained in its retreat on the very same information in January.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Best of luck with opening. It seems like you and the staff are going into the year well trained on restorative practices, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it's going to be implemented throughout the schools. That's really great. I also really enjoyed the community presentation. I loved hearing the input from community members, especially folks expressing concerns and emotions and being vulnerable in front of other community members. That really meant a lot to me. I'm curious if at this upcoming workshop, we will have the opportunity to preview the actual wording of this potential building change that we will be voting on at the following board business meeting.
We certainly can prepare that resolution so that you can see it in advance. We also intend to give you a little bit better picture on the financial savings. I have some preliminary information on that, that it's really Dan's purview, but we talked about it, and I want to have him give it to you in more detail at the next meeting, but we are getting a sense of what the savings potentially could be.
Great, thank you.
I don't expect many questions from the board because we've had numerous opportunities to weigh in on this alongside community members. And I want to echo Joe's mention that the community discussion was fantastic. There were 13 community members there. We'd love to see even more people either on Zoom or here in person for the workshop, which is our opportunity to have back and forth discussion. These business meetings are opportunities for people to address the board, but it's not going to start a discussion. The workshop is a chance to actually talk back and forth about that. Anything else from board members on this? Being a whole lot of nothing. So thank you very much, Dr. Moshe. We'll move on to public comment. Just want to note that folks will have 5 minutes to speak. You've got the timer going there. And again, just a reminder that this is an opportunity to address the board, not to engage the board in a discussion. Mr. Ms. Macaro, who's first? Okay. Right up there to the mic. I don't think it's on yet, so you'll have to turn it on.
Hello. Okay, Ashley Rados from Freeland, Washington. I've only shared with you all one page of evidence over the 100 that I have that really shows the abuse that I endured. I know that you recently all saw one. As a person with PTSD, a woman, and an advocate, I shouldn't have to prove the abuse and what has happened and how I'm impacted by it, but I'm having to. On March 3rd, I advocated for the protected right of one of my students, and here we are today. You have created a culture of fear. And if you want teachers to stay silent when wrongdoings occur to children in order to preserve the status quo, then you're doing that right now. Having PTSD is hard, and having to experience an almost identical situation twice is even harder. It is a privilege to not know how this abuse feels. And if maybe that is why you're silent, I understand, because compliance is a trauma response to fear-based conditioning, which is what is currently happening in our community. I ask you again, please, to stop the harassment and the smear campaign that is happening against me and reinstate me to my position. It is not only what is right, it is what is legal and best for students. The only thing that I am guilty of is teaching South Whitby students that their voice matters and to stand up when you see or experience a wrongdoing. What started on March 3rd turned into a violation of my rights and a wrongdoing in the decision-making. And I want to work alongside you guys to fix it and to make sure that it doesn't happen again, because it is really impactful. It's hard because there have been multiple new hires since I was let go for financial reasons. And the teacher that replaced me, she didn't teach SPED before, and new classroom teachers have been filled to which she could have stayed in that position and I would continue to have my job. But since then, new hires have been hired, and that seems like discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your comment. We actually need it on the microphone for those listening on Zoom. And if you could, I forgot to mention this. Thank you, Ashley, for starting with your name and location. So if you could do that too, please.
Yeah, I was just wondering about budget cuts here. Everybody's talking about budget cuts. How much did we get cut last year?
Could you start with your name and
Doug McKenzie. Okay. Budget cuts. How much did we get cut last year? And where did the axe fall? Okay, don't everybody talk at once.
this is an opportunity for you to address us.
Oh, okay.
It's not going to be a back and forth discussion.
And did you guys get raises on the budget cut? That's what I heard. That's all I got to say. You guys aren't going to talk to me then. Just voicing my opinion.
Thank you for sharing those concerns. Is that all that we have? I'm not seeing any from Zoom. If you are on the Zoom call and would like to make a comment, please use the Q&A function to enter your name and location right now so that we know that you're coming, and then you can start to work on typing something for me to read. I'm not seeing anything on the Q&A, so I will assume that there is no further comment coming in. We'll move on to new business. We have 2 points of new business. First, Memorandum 2122-61, approval of the 2022-2023 child nutrition paid meal pricing increase. Dr. Moshe, would you like to go over that briefly?
I think Mr. Pullman's coming on. Is that true?
Sure.
Mr.
Can you hear
Pullman,
me?
would you like to go over that briefly?
I would. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we need to put
Okay.
the volume up, Christy. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Hang on 1 second, Dan.
Okay.
Try again, Dan.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Perfect. Great. Thank you.
Okay, good. Yes. So we haven't raised prices for our paid meals since 2017-18. And the reason for that is the last 2 years, the federal government has provided free meals for every student under the age of 18, or actually every child in the community under the age of 18 who wanted to have a free meal. So what we're suggesting is raising the prices to the prices you'll see. It's about a 25% increase for breakfast and lunch, a 50% increase for adult meals. And it's to make it more in line with, first, the cost increase that we have. You know that our meal program has two components to it. The first is the food service management company, which is a fee that's raised by the consumer price index each year. And then the cost of our employees. We pay district employees to work, and those also are increased by the cost of living. So basically, if you look at the top part, you'll see how much we receive for a lunch, and the less than 60 talks about the free and reduced percentage. And as a district, we are in the mid 25 range. So this is the line we'd get. So for every free meal that we provide, we will get reimbursement from the federal government for $4.33. We currently charge $3.50 or $3.75 at the secondary level to our students who buy their meals. So, or actually, I'm sorry, it's $3.25 and $3.50 currently. And I'm suggesting we raise that to $3.50 and $3.75. We also receive a paid portion from the federal government at 77 cents. So if we add what we're charging at 77 cents, it's more in line with what the free reimbursement would be. So one, it helps to offset the deficit, and we do run a deficit in food service. The current year deficit's $140,000, more expenditures than revenue, and that's nothing new. In our district, we have done that for a long time. And it's because we value the food service program for our students. It's very important that these students have meals. So that's the suggestion, is the 25% increase to those dollar amounts that you see for breakfast and for lunch.
Thank you. Any discussion among the board?
Thanks for all the detailed information, Mr. Pullman. What would the food services deficit increase to if we didn't increase these the meal costs?
Well, I'm taking a guess at this. Rachel Matthews, who is in attendance, probably has a better idea, but I think we serve about 90,000 meals a year. And if you divide that by 4, that would give you the potential. It's actually going to be more than that, because we do have our cost per meal is going up to $3.47 for the food service management company part, and our employee cost per meal is very similar. So we're really looking in that $6 range for the cost of a meal. So that's why I suggest that we, do increase prices. We are also required by the state to have slight price increases to help get closer. It's a paid equity tool they use that based on the number of meals and your paid price, it gets closer to that free and reduced price. So we can't be too far off on what that looks like. It's a basic requirement. But again, I'm guessing another $30,000 deficit or something if we don't raise prices.
Thank you.
One concern I have about the price increase is coming from a year where students got school lunches for free and now they're seeing a price increase. I think that might kind of discourage students to get lunch and possibly lead them to go throughout a day without eating, which is one concern I have. So if possible, I don't know the mathematics, but making possibly, if we have to have an increase, making it less of an increase, because I think personally seeing a 25% increase for me is a lot. And I think other students would agree.
I agree with Audrey, especially coming off of a year, well, multiple years where we've had free lunch for everyone. I think immediately coming back and having a 25% increase may seem a lot to some people.
I just wanted to, well, first, thanks to our students for that firsthand perspective. I definitely hear the validity of your suggestions. I wanted to also just express that I hope and assume that the district is proactive about outreach to families that can benefit from this service and to students who may not have family support to benefit from this service.
We do outreach. We especially do it through our homeless liaisons, through our Readiness to Learn program, through Rachel, through the buildings, through all of the ways that we can help folks to sign up.
And this doesn't affect students that are direct certified to the state or fill out an application based on income that are qualified as free and reduced. This is only for those students that don't qualify for those two classifications that it would actually affect.
Thank you. And can I just ask, how are students treated when they come through the meal line and they're hungry and they didn't bring money? Does it go onto some kind of debit account?
Please, Rachel, because the board wants to know and you're here, so. if
Is
you
this
could-
on still? Okay. Any student that gets a meal, they get the same meal any other student would come through. So if they came through, they have no money on their account, it does go negative into their account, but they always still get a meal. And that's true for paid students or free reduced, obviously they're always free. But if free student came through and wanted a second meal or an a la carte item, a la carte being an extra pizza, we typically go negative. So they can, if they forgot their money, they can pay it off hopefully by the time they graduate. But yeah.
And Rachel, just to clarify, there are foundation groups that also cover the cost of accounts who have gone negative.
Yeah, end of the
At the end of the
year,
year.
we get a lot of donations from community members. And I think there's a fund that I don't know much about. But there are several community members and then also graduating seniors last year, even because they had money on their accounts and they hadn't used it for 2 years. A lot of them donated to siblings, obviously, or they just said pay off whoever is in the hole for graduating this year. And so we see that almost, I've seen it for the last 4 years that they'll just go ahead and donate my $4, my $12, my 50 cents, whatever. So we do see a little bit of that, but we haven't really had too many graduating seniors in the hole, which is lovely. And then administrators, to be honest, paid off 1 year. The principals paid off the full debt, which was amazing.
And I also recall a decision that this board made sometime last year around clarifying that students won't be kept from graduating based on a financial debt.
That's correct.
Great, thank you.
Thank
Any
you,
other
Rachel.
questions for me?
Thanks for letting us put you on the spot.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there any discussion to be had in regards to an amendment to address the suggestions of the students or questions of the students, or are we done with discussion? We ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor of approving memorandum 21. Oh,
May we
yes,
ask for an
please.
advisory vote?
Thank you for the reminder, both of you. Could I get an advisory vote from our two student representatives?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay. Thank you. All those in favor of approving memorandum 2122-61, approval of the 2022-2023 child nutrition paid meal pricing increase, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, the pricing increases have been approved. Memorandum 2122-62, approval of the 2022-2023 non-rep salary schedules. Dr. Moshe.
Thank you. This one is, Dan and I worked on this together, but again, he's our financial expert, so I will have him take the lead on this conversation with the board.
Yes, what this is we have several bargaining units in the district that we negotiate with. We also have a group of employees who are non-represented, who actually don't go through a bargaining process. And this was the salary schedule recommendation for those people. So there's a variety of different groups, but it's the district office staff, it's our technology facility directors, and it's community center director, transportation supervisor, just a variety of different people that don't fall in the PSC, SEIU, TWIA, or administrative bargaining groups. The top three are just salary schedules. So different people fall on different places based upon where they are on that schedule. And then the bottom three are specific individuals that are just an annual salary increase. As you know, classified salary increases were negotiated with PSC and SEIU at 6.8%. So they would be at least that percentage increase or more if they're a step increase potentially.
Any comments or questions from the board?
Yeah, so this is a little interesting because we're unlike the union. This is a little more direct. So I'm wondering if, to the extent possible, this new compensation schedule is in alignment with the district's broader compensation philosophy.
Sure.
Go ahead, Dan.
The short answer is yes. This salary schedule usually follows what we're doing with the negotiated agreements with our other classified employees, which is the PSC and SEIU bargaining units.
Thank you.
It's also important to note that we've recognized the additional duties of our directors for facilities and technology. And there's a stipend there because they both of those positions administer the additional funding through the help me out, Dan, the capital levy.
Projects levy.
So that's the stipulation there. So those individuals are seeing a pretty significant increase compared to others.
And would I be correct in assuming that these salaries more than meet the cost of living increases in terms of, sustaining people at the level that they've become accustomed to? The raises
well,
that are being received are sufficient
yeah.
to cover cost
Well,
of living?
OSPI funded the district at 5.5%, which is their IPD, and which is the way they call the cost of living increase. And these are all 6.8% or more.
Thank you.
So we do fund them higher than what we receive funding for from the state.
Not seeing any other comments or questions. Then advisory votes from our two student representatives.
Abstain.
Abstain.
All those in favor of approving memorandum 2122-62, approval of the 2022-2023 non-rep salary schedules, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The non-rep salary schedules have been approved. That concludes our new business. We'll move on to reports. I'll note one thing that didn't actually make it onto this reports is a student board rep report. So I'd like to shift over to them first.
Thank you. So it is the last week of summer, but things are starting in the school. So in the high school, we had an ASB camp this past week for all the high school ASB members to meet each other, go over some things we want to get done this next year, go over Robert's Rules of Procedure, which we will be using in this upcoming school year, and just activities that we have planned. We have another ASB camp planned for tomorrow where we will go more in depth on what we want over the school year, and also freshman orientation and new student orientation, which is this Friday, which we are all very excited for.
Sports are in full swing. On Monday was the official day of practice for a majority of high school sports. I believe football started on the 17th. And then, so yeah, a lot of students have been coming out for volleyball, boys tennis, co-ed cross country, boys football, and girls swim at Kamiak, and soccer, girls soccer, definitely. So yeah, I'm excited to see, I think there's a football game, I believe, on September 2nd. But I'm really excited to see the first competition. And it's weird having it so early in August because I think a lot of people are used to starting in September. So it's a bit of adjustment, especially with the weather.
Thank you very much. I'm certainly impressed that ASB in particular has been putting in so much work here ahead of the school year. Back in my day, we certainly didn't do that. We started when the school started. So I'm impressed that y'all are putting in the time and effort ahead of school. So thank you. Okay.
Plus one to that, but also for our athletes putting in the time to train and get back into ship shape for competition. So best of luck at the beginning of school and competition.
Okay, Dr. Moshe. Oh no, Mr. Poolman, financial and enrollment report.
Okay, I will share my screen for a second and pull that up. So we start with it being the 11th month of our 12-month fiscal year. So this is through July 31st. We have one more month remaining. So we're about 92% of the way through the year. Revenue a little over 92%, expenditures at about 90%. Even though it's a lower percentage, it's a higher dollar amount. You can see that we are spending more than we're receiving. The bottom two is just a breakdown of our revenue and when we receive it on a monthly basis and our expenditures. And if you have questions, stop me while we go through this. You can see where most of our costs, about 86.15% is salary and benefits for employees. 13.85 is going to be supplies, services, and travel. So that's the majority of how we spend our money. The big breakdown is actually on people. If we look at expenditures with encumbrances, so it's the things that we expect that we will have to pay through the month of August and sometimes in September. The non-employee costs, the MSOCs, material supplies and other costs, is at about 86%, almost $3 million. The payroll is at almost 100%, 18,862,000, and totally at about 21,830,000. Mentioned before, we did get that federal stabilization in May that we will have to pay out in the coming year. So it actually increased fund balance temporarily until we spend the money in the coming year. So what it did was it changed our fund balance projection a little bit. It's a little higher now than it would have been had we not received that money. We would be below the kind of orange line rather than on that line. Budget status report is just a breakdown by where does the money come from and what programs we spend it in. And you can see that we have the same numbers. It's 19,832,000 in revenue, 20,125,000 in expenditures. Our fund balance about $4.9 million at this time, with encumbrances, what we expect to spend in August of about $1.7 million. Balance sheet, another way of looking at the same thing, but this is just liabilities and assets. So it gives you the same information, but just, what do we owe? Where's the money sitting in that type of scenario? We do have other funds. We have the capital projects fund, which currently has almost $2.6 million in there. There's a lot of projects going on, but there is a fund balance to pay for those. Debt service, $920.21. No payments are due until we get to December again. ASB currently has $65,790 in it. Transportation vehicle fund, the money we use to purchase yellow school buses, has $462.25. So we're probably not buying any buses currently. We will get a payment in August from the state, so that'll make a difference. And then we got about $790,000 in the private purpose trust fund, which is a community generated fund for scholarships for students, and it's through donations, predominantly through 2 large donations from individuals. Any questions I could answer on the financials?
A lot of shaking heads here. Thank you, Mr. Pullman.
Great.
And now we'll move on to Dr. Moshe and the superintendent's report.
I think I gave you my full report, so I'm good. Thank you.
I know we do have some board comments or reports. Marnie, do you want to start us off?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to alert my fellow board members that the Washington State School Directors Association's General Assembly takes place virtually on September 30th and October 1st. This will give representatives from districts like ours an opportunity to vote on WASDA's legislative priorities. And all board members are welcome. And I do plan to attend as our voting member from my legislative representative role. Our September 28th meeting would be a great time to give me guidance on how to vote if our board has perspectives. And the General Assembly Handbook on the WASDA website provides a good overview of the procedure and the position proposals that are up for consideration, as well as guidelines on how to make an additional position proposal if it's not already on the table. Thank you. Oh, and if I may just add, I also wanted to give a special thank you to Christy McCarrow for all the hard work, because she does so much, much of it behind the scenes, and I am very grateful.
Any other comments from board members? Okay, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you.